He's very, very critical of other political parties who he feels are not pulling their weight on anti-Semitism. And he may have a point, he may not, but I think to see that kind of party politicization of anti-Semitism from someone who has previously done such appalling things in the past, that doesn't really sit well with me.
Anti-Jewish hate incidents have increased 21% compared to last year, according to figures from the Community Security Trust. The CST recorded over 1,900 anti-Jewish hate incidents in the first 6 months of 2026. Serious attacks this year include the Golders Green stabbing in April and a series of arson attacks against Jewish organisations and synagogues in London. The uptake in violence has been condemned by many people, including Joshua Bonehill-Paine. He's a Conservative council candidate who previously was convicted of anti-Semitic abuse. The Conservative Party has been criticised for his selection. He says he regrets his past and has served his time. And in a blog post published today by Conservative Home, he said these figures show Britain is failing the Jewish community. Well, joining me now is Dr. Dave Rich, Director of Policy at the Community Security Trust. Good morning.
Good morning.
Can we talk first about why these incidents are increasing at such a rate? What do you think is behind that?
This story really begins on the 7th of October 2023 when Hamas stormed into Israel, killed 1,200 people, took 250 hostages, and triggered the war that is still ongoing, rumbling along in the Middle East to this day. And literally from that day onwards, we saw a massive surge in anti-Jewish hate crime and hate incidents in this country. And those levels have remained just as high now as they were then. We're getting more than double, or roughly double, the number of complaints and reports from people in the Jewish community compared to before that day. And these are ordinary British people who are harassed, abused, threatened, or sometimes even, as we've seen this year, violently attacked on British streets simply because they are Jewish. And it's all the emotion and all the heat that is stirred up by the way some people react to the conflicts in the Middle East that is still driving this to this day.
What kinds of things are people recording in these statistics? Are we talking about abuse, verbal abuse? Are we talking about physical attack? What's the kind of level of response that people are recording?
So obviously we've seen earlier this year at the most extreme end of this, the appalling stabbing of 2 Jewish men in Golders Green, which of course followed the terrible terrorist attack at Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester in October last year, and the arson attacks and attempted arsons on synagogues and on other Jewish buildings that were probably directed by Iran. But most of it is day-to-day verbal comments, shouts, threats, and ordinary Jewish people going about their lives like everyone else does. And some random stranger works out that they're Jewish, maybe they're wearing religious clothing, maybe they're wearing a jewelry that denotes them as Jewish or a school uniform, and decides to just shout racist abuse at them simply for that reason.
I mentioned Joshua Bonehill-Paine in the introduction there. He is a Conservative council candidate. He's been backed by Kemi Badenoch, who said that he deserves a second chance. He's a convicted neo-Nazi. He himself has explained how he got himself into what was sort of an anti-Semitic mindset. I mean, he's written extensively about it in this blog post on Conservative Home today. Now, he says that his perspective and the way that he ended up feeling like and voicing those types of things makes him qualified to help train other people and communities out of it and to recognise anti-Semitism for what it is. How do you feel about him being a Conservative candidate, being in the public eye, being given a platform to write on Conservative Home, given his past?
Well, I remember Joshua Bonehill-Paine from 10 years ago when he went on this appalling campaign of anti-Semitism. He was an out-and-out neo-Nazi. He conducted the most vicious persecution of certain high-profile Jewish women in particular in the Jewish community, and he quite rightly went to prison for it. Look, there are former extremists who do go through a genuine process of changing their views and their outlook and then put that knowledge to good use in warning people against extremism, and clearly that's how he presents himself now. So it's not unprecedented for somebody to do that. I think the question of whether that makes them a suitable candidate for public office with everything else that comes into that is a different question. I think it is unsurprising that the people who he targeted in his hateful campaign a decade ago and the wider Jewish community would be quite taken aback to see him put up for public office. Look, the Conservative Party knows the Jewish community well, and Kemi Badenoch has been very, very strong and outspoken against anti-Semitism. So I have no doubts about her views at all. But I still think this is a situation where it's completely understandable, where a lot of people would look at this and say, well, he might be suitable to warn against extremism and anti-Semitism based on his own previous experiences. But as a representative of the party and a local councillor, really, I think that a lot of people will find that a step too far.
Do you think it's a misjudgment, a miscalculation on Kemi Badenoch's part then?
Well, I think the voters will probably decide that. And like I say, Kemi Badenoch really does understand the Jewish community and anti-Semitism and is very, very supportive. But I think in this situation, one of the things I would say, Joshua Bonehill-Paine, he's very, very critical of other political parties who he feels are not pulling their weight on anti-Semitism. And he may have a point, he may not, but I think to see that kind of party politicisation of anti-Semitism from someone who has previously done such appalling things in the past, that doesn't really sit well with me.
That's interesting. Dr. Dave Rich, Director of Policy at the Community Security Trust, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
I think there's a real important distinction there, isn't there, between you can be rehabilitated, you can use your past crimes to inform your conduct to serve society.
And you should, probably.
And you
arguably.
should.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make you a politician. It doesn't mean you're a local councillor. Abell, who comes on the show regularly, he also listens and texted in. I think it's a really interesting point as well. So we had Katie Lamb. I'm not sure how comfortable Katie Lamb was actually with this decision.
I agree with that,
but she couldn't come out and say she disagreed with it because it's been done by her leader. But Albie says, interesting to hear some Conservative voices defend Joshua Bonehill-Paine over his anti-Semitic past, arguing he has apologised, repented and deserves a second chance. While earlier this year demanding Kanye West's visa be revoked and Wireless Festival to cancel him despite his apology and repentance for historic anti-Semitism. It brings me no pleasure to ask, apart from their age and nationality, what is the principal difference between these two men? Either both apologies should be accepted or neither should. And actually, Joshua Bonehill-Paine's past is far worse than Kanye West in terms of the actual things he did. He went to prison for he was sentenced to 3 years in prison for what he did in terms of actual abuse that he was found guilty of.
It's a very interesting point. And of course, Albie has he's got a Conservative background himself, and so clearly there are people within and around the party and who support the party who are uncomfortable about this decision. A number of you messaged in this morning saying it was a misstep by Kemi Badenoch and that she'd been very solid on this issue, that this had now shaken your faith in her kind of, I suppose, her support for the Jewish community.